I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, October the 12th, brought to you in part by Brommagen Commodities. That's my friend Candy Sullivan out there in Kentucky, and she's having a busy time right now moving her headquarters to a different farm there with her Charolais cattle there that she raises purebreds. But in her daytime job, she's busy keeping her eye on the commodities, and if you guys are interested in setting up an account, trading some commodities, you need a little bit of advice on how best to hedge your crops or your cattle or whatever you're planning on doing. If it's going to involve the futures, you need to get a hold of Candy there at Brommagen Commodities, and you can reach her information at brommagencommodities.com. And don't forget, anytime that you start fooling with agriculture commodities, you can and will lose money. It's calf time, and boy, is it ever. It's just that your calves have just, in the last few weeks, just automatically, right on cue, started making up a much larger percentage of the receipts in your auctions. You look at Oklahoma National Stockyards, and that's one of those big high volume sales I've been talking about, have not been running even as big of receipts as some of your smaller sales, especially in the northern plains where it's been dry and you have so many calves moving. But they did have a good run in Oklahoma City on Monday, 8,200 head, and only 56% of the cattle weighed over 600 pounds. And likely a high percentage of those were calves too. So not many yearlings around, and whenever you do see some true yearlings, they'll gather up a pretty good crowd and some pretty handsome prices there. But the board was so friendly last week that your calves are selling really well too. And even though there's so many of them, and our limiting factors on the market on those still continues to be the same thing. If you can get enough trucks to get them hauled out of there, especially you get up in the northern plains where it's a long ways between spots, and those sales are running so many cattle, it's just hard to get them, get that many of them hauled out of there. But in the places where you can get them gone, in the places around wheat pasture and things like that, the demand is really good for calves. Thank goodness we saw that big jump in the futures market last week, and the futures were fairly friendly again to start this week, so that's a good thing. But definitely calf time, and as we go forward, guys, and I don't mean into next week, I mean over the next 10 or 20 years, this vertical integration's got a hold of this industry, guys. And like I told you, we haven't missed a step, stepping right in the tracks of the chickens and the pigs, and we continue to do that over the last several years, months, weeks, and days. I've heard them talk more about these bigger outfits, these corporate packers, their partners, and now they're forcing the hand of your larger family feeding operations that they want the cattle to be more uniform. And it's not that I don't like uniform cattle, I just like the independence of the cattle industry, people to raise whatever they want to raise whenever they want to raise them, and that's one of the greatest things about this industry. But they're continuing to turn the noose up and making people raise more uniform stock. They basically want them all to be the same kind. They're not allowing their buyers to buy what they think is worth the money. They would just soon have a fat black calf baller as they would some plainer yearlings that have a lot of go to them. But the heck of it is these larger corporate feeders that are in bed with the packers and that have the sweetheart deals, they are feeding a lot of that coon shit already. And they're feeding more than the packers even want already, but they've got a sweetheart deal with them. So there's just not any room for those plainer type cattle for the few people that want to sell negotiated and want to find a slot, want to get into some of those plants. The little bit of dab of percentage of the cattle that these packers need, they pretty much need all those cattle to be absolutely the best ones that walk. Of course, they're wanting to steal those, but that's the only ones they have room for. And that's just the nature of the beast. You know, I talked about the pigs. You go back and 50 or 60 years ago, they had all kinds of pigs. People had Yorks and Hamps and Spots and Berks and all the different kind of pigs that you see at the stock shows. But right before your hog industry went complete belly up for the independent producer and went completely vertically integrated, all your pigs were the same. They were all white. They all weighed within ounces of each other, and they all performed exactly the same. And that's where we're headed on our cattle too. And don't think I'm rooting for that. Guys, I like plain cattle. I like cattle that are worth the money. I like cattle got a little bit of differences to them. But that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. It's going to get worse as we go forward. And I hate to say it, but you guys that like to buck the trend in your production, I'm not sure if there's going to be room for you. If we go, 10 or 20 years on down the road, you got to have a market for your product. But let's talk about your board. To start the week out, October live cattle futures were up a nickel at 125.62. December down 7 cents at 130.17. On your back months, they didn't do a whole heck of a lot either. Down a dime to up 65 cents, but that's a kind of a victory after big gains that we saw last week, and we didn't start out the week on a stinker like we do lots of times. But October feeder cattle down 15 cents, and that's just your spot contract that was down, and that was at 159.32. November was up another 57 cents after big gains last week, ending on Monday at 161.72, and all your back months on feeder cattle were higher, from 35 to 97 cents higher, heavy on the 97 cents, with both your January and March contracts being up 97 cents, and that's a pretty nice gain. How about your weighted average on last week's negotiated fed cattle trade in your 5-area feeding region? We've been hearing and seeing, and even I've said it, we've had quite a bit of negotiated trade the last couple of weeks. It was still only 68,600 head in your 5-area feeding region, which is really nothing historically, but it's just gotten to where it's been so minuscule here the last couple of weeks, and especially the last 6-8 months, that would just cling to anything that looks halfway decent. It wasn't as good as your more active trade the previous week of 76,500 head, and kind of a ho-hum week a year ago, but that's how fast things change. 96,100 head a year ago was no big deal. We can't even imagine getting that much pure negotiated cash trade anymore. That's how quick it's changing, guys. Live sales of steers and heifers last week in your 5-area feeding region ranged from 121 to 125. The weighted average on live steers of 122.96. That was up 40 cents from your weighted average of previous week. But your price range was pretty much steady. Maybe steady to firm on your dress, but basically steady. There were just higher prices within that range. Dress sales, steers and heifers last week, 192 to 197, with a weighted average on dress steers of 195.37. That was up 20 cents. So we actually would have thought that our dress price would have been had a higher trend in comparison, but actually didn't. But we're going in the right direction. We would like to see it gain in hunks. We've got an opportunity to gain a lot of ground right here, guys. We haven't seen your packers buying a lot of cattle for the 2 to 4 week delivery down the line to kind of set things up. They need cattle. You got to put your feet in the ground, put your heels down, and quit rolling over for them. You look at a place where they have competitive bidding. A lot of times I'll talk about Yankton, South Dakota, or I'll talk about Worthing, South Dakota at Sioux Falls Regional Livestock, or maybe Tamer or Dunlap or somewhere like that in Iowa. I'm going to tell you about a place where they've still got some demand out there. It's a place that I know very well because I lived out there for 3 years, in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where you have the Pennsylvania Dutch people there, and they feed some of the best cattle that there are out there. They feed pretty much all steers. They get them out of Virginia, which has top quality cattle, and they'll slow feed them for a year on some silage that's got quite a bit of grain on it. But they bring those fat cattle in there to New Holland sales stables, or vintage sales stables for that matter. But I'm going to give you the market out of New Holland sales stables. This is from last Thursday. A friend of mine, a Feeder Flash gang member, kind of gave me the heads up on there because I hadn't been keeping up with that market. At times it will run at a big premium to the 5-area feeding region, then sometimes it runs about par. But man, it's stretched out there now. They've got a few smaller outfits out there still. They've got some ethnic trade out there that wants beef, and they don't have a whole lot of ready supplies. But I've yet to hear them hauling cattle, even from the Eastern Corn Belt, that often out to the Pennsylvania plants, because you got two there in Pennsylvania that both really want high quality stuff. But they're coming into the sales, bidding on cattle in competitive open bidding with price transparency. On Thursday, which is their biggest fat cattle sale, they had another one on Monday. Don't have quite as many head, but they'll get 300 to 500 head a lot of times on a Thursday, fat cattle, and they'll be the good ones. There'll be a lot of choice and the end prime on them, but the bulk of them last Thursday sell from 130 to 142 live, with a few outstanding individuals up to $155. Now, is that in a different world than what we're in? Maybe a little bit. You could say it's a different world, but it's still on this North American continent right here, and it's still the same product as the guys are feeding in the 5-area feeding region, and can't seem to get anybody excited about buying it enough to raise the price. They just want to continue to keep doing the same thing as they always do. And of course, your geniuses with NCBA and North American Meat Institute, they think that the only way that a producer can get more money for fat cattle is through some type of an alternative marketing agreement. No, they can just pay more for them. You can bid a guy more for cattle, and he'll likely sell you the best ones. That's kind of how it works. It has always worked with anything else. But they're going to lead you to believe that we need more vertical integration. You have to have some type of a alternative marketing agreement to get paid more for your higher quality cattle. No, they can just pay more for them if they want to. But nationwide, your trade, direct trade last week had 85,000 head of pure negotiated cash. They turned in nearly 48,000 head of negotiated grid. Where we're getting all of them, I don't know, because the same time a year ago we had only 26,200 head. But they're just finding more negotiated grid, and then the guys with audit review and compliance with USDA don't have the stones or the brains enough to go in there and find where they're tweaking those, where they're finding all these negotiated grid, which there's likely no negotiation in at all. It's a take it or leave it deal. That's not negotiation, guys. Forward contracting receipts last week were 43,300 head. And then the elephant in the room, your formula trades, which all your big corporate feeders do, made up 265,700 head of last week's trade. But of the 85,000 pure negotiated cash, only 10% or less than 10% were for the 15 to 30 day delivery. This is the third week in a row that your packers haven't been able to buy a lot of cattle for 2 to 4 weeks out. So they're not setting things up, guys. They're close to the knife. They need cattle. I talked to some of my friends that are feeding cattle right here in the Texas Panhandle last week. They bought cattle one day and shipped them the next. So you know they're getting pretty close to the knife when they need that. You got to go and try to get more. Our show lists are down big this week. It's a good opportunity to make some hay, maybe $2 or $3 if a guy would try. Box beef cutout values were mixed again. On Monday, choice cuts were down $2.15 at $281.12. Select up 90 cents at $263.64. What else is going on? I want to talk to you about the Beefmaster Performance Group. It's a big sale coming up. It's the 4th annual Red River Bull Sale. I was there last year. I don't think it's on my schedule to be here this year, but I've been back to that sale several times at Paris Livestock Auction. My friend Gilly Flott is part owner there, and he's a go-getter, and he leases that facility to that Beefmaster Performance Group there, and they have a really nice sale there and a lot of good people involved. It's on October the 23rd there on a Saturday. Paris Livestock Auction right there east of Paris, Texas, right on the highway, right next to the sale barn that's abandoned, and also a nice new facility, which I think is kind of cool. But anyway, the Beefmaster Performance Group, they focus on milk production, disposition, weight, fertility, conformation, and hardiness in the bulls that they bring to that performance group sale there, the 4th annual sale, Red River Bull Sale. Get on dvauction.com and view and bid that sale, or if you're in the area, go over to Paris Livestock Auction and check it out on the 23rd. Let's talk about what else is going on in your feeder cattle markets. They got a big sale coming up here on Tuesday, a pretty good sale. Lone Star Stockyards, my friend Bill Martin there, that's Wildorado, Texas, just west of Amarillo. And they've got some true blue yearlings, guys. 625 head of true yearling feeder cattle coming right off grass over by Pampa, Texas. Some of them are going to be calf weight yearlings. 650 to 825 pound of true yearling cattle there. Now they are going to be mostly Okie type cattle with a few crossbreds on them, but Bill's going to have them sorted up into groups. You can find something there that you like, but you know, of that 625 head, he'll have them sorted up into load lot groups there, and you can kind of pick out what you want. But he's also got 130 head of more native type steers from Claude, Texas, coming in right off the grass, weighing 800 pounds. So check out Lone Star Stockyards. That's another sale you can watch on dvauction.com every Tuesday right there. Call into their office and give them a heads up. Tell them you'd like to bid on that sale if you'd like to, and I'm probably going to be over there on Tuesday morning to check that deal out too. But let's talk about your feeder cattle market on Monday to start the week. Real-time index on DV Auction ended the day on Monday at 153.23. That was up 20 cents from the close of last week, or your Friday, Saturday sales there. So gaining a little bit of ground, and that's when we had a lot of your high volume Monday sales. Sometimes they don't have the best quality and they'll have some off deals in there, but we still gained some ground. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma National Stockyards, 8,200 head there. Feeder steers were $2 to $4 higher. Feeder heifers were unevenly steady. The calf market was higher. When you had that much of a high concentration of calves, the steer calves were $3 to $5 higher. Heifer calves steady to $2 higher. I can't tell you how strong of a signal that is when you've got that many of them. But I tell you what, we've had enough moisture on this wheat. Guys are going to have early grazing on your wheat, and it's looking really good. So guys are pretty excited about getting that done, and we're starting to see a change in the weather a little bit. Those calves are not going to be the easiest things in the world to straighten out, but it's time to do it if that's what you do. Joplin Regional Stockyards there, they only had about 3,800 head there, and that was one of their lighter runs on there, but had a good market. Steers $2 to $4 higher, heifers $2 to $5 higher, spots more on some yearling heifers that they had on hand there, but a really good sale at Joplin Regional Stockyards. I tell you where they had a good sale was in Faith, South Dakota, Faith Livestock Auction, over 7,000 head. And calves are moving right now, moving a good 3-4 weeks earlier than usual. And by the time we get through October, I'd say the Northern Plains are going to be mostly out of calves because they've all sold them early because it was so dry there. But Faith, you look at this automated market report out of Faith Livestock Auction there, and you won't get this report anywhere else unless they pay for it. They're not reported by any other third-party entity, but they sure are with us, and we like talking about Faith Livestock Auction. $2 to $4 higher, just as honest as you could call it right there on your biggest bunches. You notice they're not selling many big cattle right now, especially on the steers. They didn't have hardly any at all, but that's because calves are what's moving right now. Look at your best tested weights of calves out of Faith. 1,555 head of 4-weight steer calves, average 470 pounds with a weighted average price of $197.53. Almost 2,100 head of 5-weight steers, average 546 with a weighted average price of $181.65. Look at some of your heifers. 1,278 head of 4-weight heifer calves, average 463 at $179.91 on your weighted average price, and 968 head of 5-weight heifers, average 5 1/4 at $165.09. A place down here in the Southern Plains that had a good sale, and a Feeder Flash gang member sent me some information from the sale that I've never talked about before, always wanted to. Western Oklahoma Livestock Auction, just right outside of Clinton, Oklahoma, right on I-40 there. And you guys have been by there. I've never stopped, but I've admired it from the highway many, many times, and got some friends that auctioneer there, and I'd heard they were been getting along real well. Daniel Ferrari sent me some quotes on some calves that he sold there, including 139 head of black motley faced steers there. They were kind of short yearling cattle, fall born there. They were 90 days for sure weaned there. Had a nice yearling type condition to them, as you can see in this picture. 139 of them weighed 751 at $163.50 there in Clinton, Oklahoma at Western Oklahoma Livestock Auction, and good job to them. Some other places around the circuit: Tri-State Livestock Auction, McCook, Nebraska. We get big quotes out of there all the time. Look at these blacks and Charolais that sold 60 head of them, weighed 815 at $166. That's 13 bucks over your index, guys, weighing in the 8s there. It's unbelievable. But the best quote that I saw anywhere on Monday, your Zach Tran top quote for the day, indeed come out of Faith Livestock Auction in Faith, South Dakota. These are some black steer calves, right off the cow, mind you. 177 head of them, weighed 611 at $189.75. And that's your Feeder Flash for Tuesday.